The question of the filibuster, a few years ago, when there was a Democratic administration and there were Republicans in the Senate who were obstructing legislation relative to voting rights legislation, relative to women's rights legislation, relative to some of the economic program that the president wanted to. You were very critical of Democrats who stood in the way of the filibuster being eliminated. Now we have a situation where the president is pressuring Republicans to do away with the filibuster because he wants to pass the SAVE Act, which is not just voter ID, but requiring people to have a birth certificate, a passport in order to register to vote in response to a problem that no evidence suggests is really a problem. But now what do you feel? Are you for doing away with the filibuster now?
Yeah, here's the thing about the filibuster. Filibuster, first of all, one of the things that I do not appreciate is the wholesale fictionalization of American history, and this idea that the filibuster was this grand compromise that was intentionally put into our system. The filibuster in the Senate was created by a clerical error from trying to copy the House rules into the Senate rules, and it was done incorrectly, and Jim Crow segregationists realized that they could use this clerical error as a loophole to try to delay the enfranchisement of Black Americans for decades. That's the origin of the filibuster is part of the legal institutions, or rather the institutionalized racism that was baked into our institutions. And so this idea that it was like this high-minded, intentional mechanism is just a fairy tale. And it's a fairy tale that's meant to launder the history of racism in America as something that's not.
So even if it means that some legislation that you don't...
And so if you want to take the SAVE Act, for example, I think that there are in many ways in which the filibuster presently takes responsibility away from senators. Because when you have to meet a 60-vote threshold, nothing is real anymore. You're not really responsible for any consequential decisions outside of reconciliation. Let Lisa Murkowski take that vote on the SAVE Act. Let Susan Collins take that vote on the SAVE Act. I dare you. I dare you. Call the question. Let these people, let these senators actually assume personal responsibility for once for their own political decisions, instead of hiding behind this amorphous lack of responsibility for anything. And that's what the filibuster represents. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, any swing state senator doesn't have to sweat many important decisions because they get to hide behind this thing that is an invention that is designed to help them abdicate their responsibility. And I actually think that perhaps there would be a lot more Senate seats. There's an open question, right, as to whether even more Senate seats were at play if the stakes of people's votes were more real in a filibuster. And when everything is done through reconciliation, it also takes transparency away from the American people, because all these things can only get passed if you have 1,000 bills that are jammed into one massive thing that passes once every year, once every two years. And
maybe $1 billion for a ballroom.
Right, $1 billion for a ballroom, yes. All of it. And so I still think get rid of the filibuster, and let them be responsible for their own decisions.